we're live now.
Perfect.
Hello, my friends. It's Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. Surprise! Surprise! Normally we don't come on. I don't normally come on live in the mornings, although for some of you I know it's the afternoon. But we happen to have a very special visitor today, Joana, who's running the IC retreat this weekend. So we thought we would come in and talk a little bit about the big event that's happening this weekend, and also take your questions. Now, Joana, just so you know, I can't see anything else on Facebook, so I can't see who's here right now or anything. And it's probably going to take several minutes for people to wander in as people wander in. Sound good?
Perfect. Perfect. I've got an eye on it on my phone, just.
Excellent. I should have this other computer turned on too, which I can do. All right. So, how did you get interested in IC? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in IC.
So I have IC myself. Before I got diagnosed, I think most people, had absolutely no idea that it existed. I had no idea what it was. Yeah, it was a case of me starting quite typically, I think, with a lot of UTIs, or what I suspected were UTIs. From going back close to 10 years ago now was when I sort of started having all of those symptoms. And not really getting answers for years, feeling very, very confused, feeling very lost. I was about 19 when I started getting symptoms. So sort of my uni years and everything, I just knew that I would get pain specifically after drinking alcohol the next day, which I now know why, and from sex. I would get what I suspected was a UTI always the next day. And it took years to get diagnosed until I was about 25, I think 25, 26, when I finally got a diagnosis, and went through countless urologists, urogynecologists, different specialists, GPs, the works, and nobody really understood what was wrong with me until I moved to Australia and finally got diagnosed there. And then I learned I suspected I'd had it from my hours of research, but I really didn't want to have it because the prognosis was so scary. It was terrifying. I thought, this can't be possible. And then I did, and it was just absolutely terrifying. I had no idea what to do. I wasn't given enough information, and then I was just kind of sent home. And I thought, oh, okay, that's great news. And then I started doing loads of research into it. I was luckily put in charge, put in contact with a really fantastic pelvic floor PT who kind of gave me a little bit more information, but I didn't have any pelvic floor dysfunction.
Hold on, the event just shut down.
Oh,
Something happened. The video ended.
really?
Mm-hmm.
It's still showing on my phone.
On mine. It's showing that it ended.
Come on, let me have a look.
Let me reload.
No, I think it's still going.
Is it still going? Okay. Hi, you guys.
So,
Sorry, technology sucks.
hang on, let me just check.
Okay, it ended for me, and then it started again.
Yeah, still going. Erin says, I still see you.
Okay.
Still. Are we
So,
still with live?
yeah,
Yeah, still good.
we're good. So basically, Joana, you're a lot like me, and that is that you got a diagnosis. The information that you got about the diagnosis was certainly daunting, certainly scary. And honestly, you just weren't going to put up with it. You were going to learn as much as you could about it. You were going to empower yourself, and you eventually decided that this was going to be a life passion for you, like it is for me. And isn't that the blessing? Isn't that the blessing that
Yeah.
happens sometimes? I firmly believe that we have, at least for me personally, and I know that this is going to sound very weird, but whenever I have a flare, whenever something happens, it's like I feel like I'm supposed to learn something from it and then help somebody with that information, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also you learn so much more about your body and what does work for you and what doesn't work for you. So
Mm-hmm.
I look back at the habits which I had 10 years ago when my symptoms were kind of starting, and
Mm-hmm.
I was at uni, I was drinking very heavily. I wasn't eating. I mean, I always ate well, but not particularly well, and my emotional health wasn't very good, all of these different things. And I think that coming out of it, I now know my own boundaries so much more than I ever probably would have done if I'd not gone through everything which did happen.
And you know what's interesting is I was just working with a big national researcher in
Yeah.
pain processing, the pelvic floor, and it was a gentleman. In fact, we're going to do a very, very big event, a big article and stuff like that for him. And it was the same thing for him. That when he was younger, he had trauma, and that created the foundation for what we now know as chronic overlapping pain conditions, and for the anxiety that comes with that, the other real bladder, bowel, other issues that are happening. And it was just so comforting to see somebody else just not only want to help people, but man, just the hardest researcher ever, using every personal experience he had to try to understand what we are dealing with. And I'm just so impressed with you, and I'm so impressed with him and everybody out there. Listen, there comes a moment where we go from being a victim to being empowered. And for me, that moment was when I had a doctor say to me, you will forever be a burden on your family. You will always live with chronic pain. This is your life. Get used to it. I had a doctor say that to me. And that
my moment was when a doctor said to me, well, some women just live like this. You've just got to get over it. I'll put you on a low dosage antibiotic. And I was like, no, they don't. That's not an answer. And that moment stuck with me, because I thought that cannot and will not be patient care. No. Like, you're supposed to be a top urologist, and you're telling me you're too young to have anything seriously wrong with you. There's nothing physically wrong with you. You're fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just deal with it, because some women just do.
Yeah. It's I know. I think part of it is growing up. I think part of it is becoming a mature, assertive adult. I think part of it is stepping away from people who would push you down and victimize you to people who will embrace you and comfort you and empower you and give you joy and excitement in your life and purpose. That's what I mean. Purpose more than anything else.
Purpose. And I think when you've personally been through what I see makes you go through,
right,
you know, the way that you work with your clients and with people changes. In fact, your whole perception of life changes. Everything changes.
It does.
Everything.
It does.
And the way that you can empathize with people, and the way that you I think connect with people also changes, right? Because you suddenly have this whole new level to yourself that you didn't even know existed, because previous to any symptoms, you just took your health for granted, I suppose. I don't know if that, and you just expect to wake up and be fine. But actually, when you're living in chronic pain, you don't wake up and you're fine, because you're either in pain or you're exhausted.
Right.
So never any normality.
Right. So now you are a registered dietitian. You're specializing in IC. You've already worked with many patients.
I will correct. I'm a nutritionist, not registered dietitian.
Oh,
I think
that's because that's the title in England, right? Compared to in the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, UK thing.
Okay. So then you decided to do this IC retreat. What was your motivation behind that, and what are your goals for the event this weekend?
So the IC retreat, I felt like during my experience and through, because at the moment I work one-to-one with clients, and a lot of the experiences that I'm having and seeing is that there is so much information online, but when they go to a specialist because they need answers, people don't know enough about IC. They'll go to their doctor, they'll go to their urologist, they'll go to an endocrinologist, they'll go to a gut specialist, they'll go to whoever, and they don't understand the links between IC, and they get brushed off.
Right.
And they don't get that information that they need to be able to then, ask the questions. What you're doing on the IC network is phenomenal, particularly having that live time weekly that people can ask questions.
Right.
And, I know that I open my messages and I have so many messages from people all the time asking me different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a gut specialist. I'm not a hormone specialist. I'm not a pelvic floor physio. And there is a limit to my knowledge.
Right.
And so I wanted to create something where there is so many different practitioners all in one place, where people can get not just the information from the specialist, but from a specialist with how that ties into IC.
Right.
So how do hormones tie into IC right from a hormone specialist, from a doctor, a proper urogyno who actually works. And my favorite part is that he's a man and he's so invested in IC, right?
Right.
Or gut specialist that's hugely invested in IC, so that they understand not only, how the gut works and all of those things, but also how that is actually involved within IC and how that can flare our symptoms. So, when we're seeing, candida overgrowth, or we're seeing really bad IBS, which makes our symptoms flare.
Right.
These things, bringing that together, and then creating a kind of fun element to it as well, right? So we're bringing in pelvic floor yoga, we're bringing in psychedelic breath work, we're bringing in all of these different tools to help with the nervous system and the pain-brain connection. So that because when you've got chronic pain, you don't want to go to yoga and you don't want to go to these different sessions because you're scared about finding a toilet or disrupting the class, or that your bladder's going to flare halfway through, or that you won't be able to do the whole session. But this way, everything is in one place, at home, recorded, and it's done right from people who understand. So most of our specialists also have had some level of chronic pain, and they've come through it because people need to be able to relate. So, we've got all of these different people. So we've got I think it's 14 doctors and specialists coming in. Some people are doing more than one session. So we've got close to 20 hours. I don't know exactly how many it is, but we've got 17 odd hours of specialists, of people who have such a profound knowledge of IC as well, so that they've got a full session plus a Q&A, so that people actually have that opportunity to ask them questions, to really get a proper understanding of what's going on. And being armed with the knowledge and the tools directly from them is so important. So I wanted the knowledge side of it, and then I wanted the tools side of it. So all of our specialists will be bringing tools, and we've got the wellness sessions, which will be great for the nervous system. And then, sessions like sex and intimacy with pelvic pain, which is just, where do you go to speak to somebody about that? Because I would have personally had no idea until I found Shani, who is just phenomenal.
Right.
So all these different components, because there needs to be a well-rounded approach to IC, where we are looking at things as a whole, we're looking at the body as a whole, and we're looking at, at a whole person, and how your gut affects your hormones, or how your nervous system can affect your gut and your hormones, and therefore your IC. Bringing everything together so that people leave with the right information, having been able to ask the right questions, and also having a really full toolbox of things to do to really start that path towards getting their symptoms under control. So, because I know that this is everything that I needed when I was just stuck there, I have no idea where to go or what to do, because the specialist I would speak to would say, well, this is wrong, but I don't know how that would affect your IC. It wouldn't. So bringing everything together in one, and making it as easy as possible.
So what's so important about this is now we understand the totality of this. So back when I was diagnosed 35 years ago, it was bladder, 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 bladder. And I can remember in my early days, I would have really weird flares. I would start with feeling like I had a yeast infection for a day or two. Then I would have a day or two of urethral pain. Then I would finally have that whole bladder involved flare. And I can remember I went to my urologist and I went to my gynecologist and I said, what is this all about? I can tell exactly what's going to happen. And they both thought I was kind of nuts. And today we understand that it's far beyond the bladder, that nerves are involved, that the brain is involved, that the central nervous system is involved, that the pelvic floor muscles are involved, that other things can be involved. And so I'm really impressed with your event, because the last time I did an event like this, number one, we couldn't do it all in one weekend. And number two, we couldn't record them. We only had text transcripts. But I think most importantly, you're helping patients understand context. We're helping patients understand that, yeah, we have to calm the nervous system. Yes, we have to address underlying pelvic floor issues. Yes, you have to modify your diet. Some of you do. You do because you might have Hunner's lesions, big open wounds in your bladder, or you might have estrogen atrophy. And so I love what you're doing, and I think it's going to be the first of many great things that you're doing. And frankly, I'm impressed. I'm so impressed that you're doing it. I think it's just a great resource, and it is the future. Here's the irony. 20 years ago, I went to the National Institutes of Health and said, "Can we broadcast live over the internet your IC event?" And I said, "Listen, most urologists can't attend. Most researchers can't attend. They can go to one event a year." And they laughed at me 20 years ago. And this weekend, I got the announcement for the new upcoming National Institutes of Health IC meeting. And guess what? It's virtual.
Wow.
So this is the future that we can bring these events into a patient's home, into a doctor's office, it's just fabulous.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I've just had a question saying, how can we get a retreat like that in the US? This is global. This is what I love about this. You can do it from home. So if you go to www.theicretreat.com, you can purchase your ticket on there. If you use the code Jill10, you've got a discount from Jill, and there's also payment plans available through PayPal. But this event, I wanted, my favorite thing, which I don't know if I haven't told you about this, Jill. On Sunday, I got a message from a urogynecologist saying, "I want to participate to make my patient care better in my practice." Because this is what people need to see. Because when I went to my urologist, and I, similarly to you actually, was getting really well. I mean, I did actually have very chronic yeast infections, which was also because my gut was so dysregulated, and my nervous system was in an absolute state because my symptoms got slowly worse. My mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer when I was 21, and she died when I was 25. And my symptoms got worse, boom, like skyrocketed. And both me and my sister were getting chronic yeast infections throughout the whole time of Mum's illness, and not one person said to us, "You need to address your gut and your nervous system."
Right.
Nobody. And I remember saying to my practitioner, "Can my symptoms be getting worse because of my yeast infections? Can that affect anything?" And he said, no, it's completely unrelated. Let me just give you some more creams." And I said, "What?" Yeah. And then, you find out all of these things later on when you start looking at the whole body, and, you find that it's incredible because everything impacts it. There is so much going on in the body that we need to have the information about. So, I'm just super excited for it, and to really get the word out. And I've so happy that we've also got urogynos and practitioners attending, because they need the information. Because my ultimate goal, as you said, what's your goal for this, is to improve patient care from urologists, because that's crucial. I am yet to find, except for Dr. Ben, who's coming to the retreat, a urologist who actually wanted to help people with IC, improving patient care from a urology level, and improving information and knowledge from a patient level. And also, it's family members can come as well, so that they can kind of understand the scale of this and what it does to your body.
And the times are Eastern Standard Time, guys. So this is an event that you can easily participate here from the United States. She's really picked an excellent timeline, and even if you can't participate at the time, it will all be recorded. And so you will be able to refer back to it and watch it after the fact, and you can pick what sessions you want, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is truly the first global event of this magnitude, and it's absolutely wonderful. Tell us a little bit about your speakers. So I know I'm speaking, which is great.
Jill's coming to a phenomenal session. We pre-recorded it in case of the fires, and when we were finished, I was supposed to ask Jill questions just in case there was anything, and I said to her, "I don't really have anything to ask, because that was so good that I don't really know what else to ask." Because from an outsider, I was like, this is just phenomenal. So Jill's doing an absolutely mind-blowing session I will just go to my speakers because we have so many that I actually
Yeah,
forget.
and folks, just so you know, we are in fire season here in the United States. I've been with a couple of conferences so far. We record everything in advance because I never know when they're going to turn the power off and or if we have to evacuate. Hopefully, I'll be able to do it live, but possibly not. That's why it's pre-recorded. But tell us about your other speakers.
Yeah, so we've got me. I'll be doing a session on nutrition and IC, and giving a full talk on sort of the elimination diets, how we should be doing that properly, and loads of things around that. And we've got Jill coming to do a fantastic session. We've got Dr. Ben Barenberg, who's our urogynecologist. He works with a lot of women with IC, which is fantastic. So he'll be coming to do a session. Can't read that properly. We've got Dr. Jessica Drummond. So she's coming on to do a session on hormones and then a second session on the gut, which is so important to then address, the hormonal things and also candida and various different IBS and gut and all of these different things on that. Then we've got we've got Jessica Duffin. She's actually an endometriosis specialist. So we know that this is a co-condition of IC. So I thought it was really important to bring somebody on to really talk about that. So yeah, she's going to be doing SIBO, endometriosis and IC. We've got Carden Rabin, who's a pain-brain specialist. So he's coming on to talk about the pain-brain connection, how that can be formed. And we've got chronic pain and how we can actually come out of that. And he's got some fantastic tools for that. We've got Shani Hutton. So she's a sex, love and relationship coach. And she's also going to be doing 2 sessions. So she'll be doing a session on emotional empowerment. And really getting rid of some of that stagnant energy in the body and some of the stagnant emotions in the body. And then she'll be doing another session on intimacy with pelvic pain. She's fantastic. She's so knowledgeable. She's helped me personally through a lot because that was a really big problem for me as well. We've got Marnie Glavin coming on to do a biopsychosocial approach to IC. So really focusing on the whole body and also her own story because she's got IC. Penny Peterson's coming on to do pelvic floor yoga. So she lives with pelvic pain as well. So it's specifically about that. Laura Holland is a pelvic health physio coming on to do a session there. Rose, and my favorite bit about her session is that she'll be talking about how we can actually help the pelvic floor without doing a pelvic floor examination, which is fantastic because that can feel so terrifying for so many people when there's so much pain there. Rose Covenant coming on to do the nervous system, like the basics of the nervous system and how that can pain. Tamsin Willis is coming to do a session on psychedelic breath, which is a kind of breath work to electronic music. Sounds nuts, incredibly powerful and great for the nervous system. Alison Hughes, who's coming to do a Qigong yoga flow. So she's got IC as well. And then Hannah Bartlett, who is my sister. And my sister is a psychologist and she's coming on to do a session about mindset when we're going through anything like chronic pain. And she'll also probably be touching on some trauma work as well, which she does a lot. So, and then there's a girl who we got yesterday. She's coming on to do a 30-minute session of how she's thriving having IC as well. She's 21. She's just gone viral on TikTok because of her stories. Brianne Rogers, because of her story with IC. And she's coming to do a 30-minute session on her diagnosis, her story, and just to kind of provide some hope out there, because I think that's a really scary thing, right? Is that often we're left without hope. So yeah. The very full weekend, lots of information, lots of things happening, but there'll be a chance to ask questions at the end and it'll all be recorded as well, which is fantastic.
It's an incredible panel. Now, Victoria on Facebook asked, do you know of any good female urologist or urogynecologists in the United States? So Victoria, the ratio between male and female urologists is very, very small around the world. I can remember, I'll tell you something funny. When I went to my very first IC or AUA meeting, which was in Los Angeles like 25 years ago, and I was going up this massive escalator, and there were just men pouring out, just men. And I literally started humming to myself, "It's raining men, hallelujah." It was hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. And out of this group of maybe 20,000 urologists, there were maybe 500 women, maybe. And so it's actually pretty hard to find a female urologist. That said, we have a database on our website that's completely updated. So if you go to icnetwork.org, you can search our database. And we also have we have other places that you can go. Another great place to look for providers that's actually an international list is the International Pelvic Pain Society website, which is pelvicpain.org. Go to there, find a provider area, and you can look in there too. And you're always welcome to call. We're always, if I just, there are so few, unfortunately. It's just very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single urologist I spoke to was male except one, and she was the one that diagnosed me. But I would get a phone call every 3 months from the urology clinic to check in on how I was doing. And I was given one phone call by a woman, and I was so shocked by her attitude towards me. She laughed at me down the phone when I said, I'm in so much pain, and I'm having pain down into my ankle and into my foot every time I finish weeing. And she laughed at me down the phone and said, well, I've never heard that one before.
See, and that's such an interesting symptom. So tell us a little bit about that. So as you were emptying your bladder, you got pain in your foot? Tell us about that. That's fascinating.
From my understanding, which is limited because I'm not a doctor, there's, I think, in the brain, the nerves for something are in a very close position. Jill, you probably know more about this than me, are very close to each other in the brain. And so it causes almost like the wrong nerve to be set off. I don't know. That was my understanding of it. And that's why sometimes we can experience pain in the feet when we're urinating and it hurts.
So proximity matters. And the other great challenge here is that the pelvis is a very small confined area with a lot of things going on, muscles, nerves, bones, organs. And I actually had something very similar happen to me. What happens to me, and it started in my 20s, absolutely freaked me out. And you guys, everybody who watches my streams, they know that I have no shame. I will talk about anything. The more embarrassing, the better. I was literally, when I was reading on my couch in my 20s at some point in time, and I noticed that the bottom of my feet were tingling. Both feet tingling, and like really tingling. It's like, what the heck is this? And that it happened several times, and I started getting quite worried about it. And then I noticed that about 10 to 15 minutes after they tingled, I had to have a bowel movement. And as soon as I had a bowel movement, it went away.
What?
And it's still true today. That is still absolutely true today. If my feet start to tingle, then I know I'm going to have to find a restroom sooner rather than later. And that's just proximity. That just means that the sciatic nerve, and there's another nerve I think that's involved. Well, the femoral nerve obviously too, although I don't think that that's going to cause a foot issue. Anyway, it just means that something's pushing against that. It's just the way you're built. That you've got nerves going down by your colon, down by your bladder, and so there are lots and lots of connections. The other thing a lot of people don't know, and I was working with a doctor like last week who honestly didn't really quite understand this, is that all the nerves in the pelvis merge at the spinal cord. And they've done radioactive tracers from nerves in the bladder and nerves in the bowel and followed them up the nerves, and they ended up in the same nerves in the spinal cord. So it's not like it's a separate nerve that goes to the brain for your bladder and a separate nerve that goes to your, that goes from your bowel. They actually merge into the same nerve. And so that's where we get something called cross-sensitization or nerve crosstalk, where we have research that shows that if the bladder gets irritated, the bowel will show signs of irritation. If the bowel gets irritated, the bladder will show signs of irritation, right?
Which is why it's so important to look at the whole body when we're looking at IC, right? Particularly in the pelvis, because so many different things will affect so many other different things as well. So, and it's crucial even to start right from the brain. So, looking at all of these things is nuts. And the fact that a urologist laughed at me, and it was my pelvic floor physio who I went to see, and I asked her about it, and she sort of said to me, you're not going mad.
No.
And she was fantastic. She was really, really wonderful. But I didn't have any pelvic floor dysfunction, which I was very disappointed about at the time, because I thought, well, I don't know how else to treat this. And she kind of explained it. And so it really shows that there's so much in the body and we're connected, right? We're like a web, we're like a giant spider's web. That's how I think.
Well, and as Dr. Jerome Weiss says in his book, Western medicine fails the typical pelvic pain patient because doctors play in their sandbox. Urologists stay in the urinary tract, gastroenterologists stay in the bowel, and they don't look at relationships. And here's the issue. The pelvis is a small confined area with a lot of stuff and structures going on, and they do not operate in isolation. They influence each other tremendously. So so we know that the bladder, for example, can change how muscles behave. We know that because if the bladder's screaming in pain, the muscles will get tight in a guarding reflex. We also know now that muscles can change bladder behavior. That if those muscles are tight and dysfunctional, that patient has ischemia, reduced blood supply, which then is going to affect the long-term health of the bladder. And I've got somebody... Guys, can you give me a second? It is my 93-year-old mother. Give me 1 second, okay? Joanna, take it away.
I will talk more about the retreat then, that is fine. So within the retreat, we really wanted to kind of encompass all of this, right? And this really big focus on the, you know, on the fact that IC is such a whole body condition and that we really do have to focus on various different things in the body. So focusing on the gut is crucial if we're focusing on the bladder, and focusing on the hormones is crucial if we're focusing on the bladder, and the pain-brain connection, because all pain is actually created in the brain. So, you know, focusing on all of these different things, because when I was first diagnosed, I had absolutely no idea that my pain was partly to do with, I had really bad gut dysbiosis, and my gut was really, really in a really bad way. And that's why I was getting all of these yeast infections and getting all of these vaginal infections and getting all of these problems, was because my gut was in such a bad way and I was getting urinary symptoms from it. And also my nervous system was in tatters because I'd gone through, you know, 7 years of chemo and cancer treatments with my mum, and then she unfortunately passed away, and my nervous system just couldn't do anymore. So when we're looking at all of these different things, and then we think, okay, well, I can kind of understand why I'm getting urinary issues, right? And we start to look at these things. But my favorite thing, in which I can now look back on, is we don't actually know what we don't know we don't know. And, you know, I think when we look at IC and we don't know, there's so much that can affect it. How are we supposed to know that we don't know that? So it's, you know, it's this whole thing where education really is the start of symptom remission. It's the start of symptom control, because we know then what targets.
That's it. It's control. It's about helping us all understand that there are things that we can do on a daily basis that will get us in a better place. Case in point, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure a month ago. I now have normal blood pressure. Why? Because I took charge of my self-help. I reduced salt. I'm exercising every day. And last night my blood pressure was 120/76. When? And ironically, I had a long talk with my doctor on Friday. She wanted me to go on blood pressure medication.
Really?
And I'm like, but it's normal. And she goes, yeah, but it's a silent killer. It's like, honey, believe me, I can take my blood pressure. I will be active. And that's kind of an important lesson for us all, because there are, you know, I think number one, it's really easy to look for a pill to fix things.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys, this pelvic pain is not like that. You cannot take a pill and make all this go away. We have to understand the underlying anatomy, and we have to address the underlying dysfunctions that are going on there. And a pill is not going to make this go away. You know, and number two, kind of the great lesson, again, reinforced to me, is that doctors will often throw a pill at you to relieve them of your presence, for lack of a better term, you know, and it's the easy way out. You got to be willing to do the work, and doing the work in IC is
fundamental.
It's fundamental. It's taking responsibility for what you're eating. It is a wake-up call for those of us who used to drink a lot of coffee, used to eat a lot of junk food, there comes a reckoning moment where we have to come to grips with the fact that some of our food habits are not healthy in the long run, like me eating a lot of salt, which played a huge role in my blood pressure. You know, and then taking responsibility for our physical health and how are we doing physically and are we exercising, and then taking responsibility for our emotional health. And we were kind of talking about that a little bit, because when my bladder pain started, now realize I had all the related conditions in my 20s. My IC didn't hit until my 30s. I had a terrible job. I hated my job.
Yeah.
And it was just so, even, you know, I was a fun developer for a nonprofit, like a really famous nonprofit. And I was treated so badly. I mean, like, my boss said to me, she said, "Oh, you come from weak stock." She said that publicly. "You come from weak stock." And I'm like, "Oh, that's right. Insult me and insult my entire family?"
Wow.
And I can remember thinking to myself, God, I wish I could get sick and not go to work.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you talk with IC patients, one of the trends that you see is that sometimes it happens during periods of great, great stress.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. I notice with all of my clients and myself.
oh, yeah. And now we understand that context, because we understand central nervous system windup. We understand what happens if you're in a situation where you're bullied, what happens at work as an adult. 21 days of bullying at work will change your brain into a chronic fight or flight. And what happens when you're in chronic fight or flight is your body starts to intensify pain. It starts to intensify muscle tension. And so, again, getting back to that core point, that this is a wake-up call. We have to look at multiple factors, and we have to look at, you know, how we're living our lives, and are we being healthy, and are we being functional, and does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I completely agree. We have to look at all of the different things going on in the body. We have to look at the physical, you know, and the emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really big part which is actually forgotten about when we're treating. I see so many people say, "Well, I'm really stressed and I know that stress brings on my flares, but, you know, I don't know what to do about it." But the problem is that we live in a society where people are chronically stressed, and people are so stressed all of the time that they don't even know that they're stressed.
Oh, and then think about what we've all lived through in the last 2 years with COVID. Literally watching our family members and friends dying. And then throw in these crazy 5-6 years of politics. It doesn't matter where you are, the politics in this world right now are
nuts.
It's nuts. And throw in the fact that we're all connected on the internet, and the internet is the internet thrives on getting you worked up because they want you to come back. And how we all have to step away from that and find that peace and focus on creating a healthy life for ourselves. Nobody's saying IC is all in your head. Nobody's saying that it's your fault. Nobody is saying that you need therapy. Nobody is saying that. But what we are saying is that this is a pelvic pain syndrome that has multiple facets to it. Yes, some of you have Hunter's lesions. Some of you have big bloody wounds on your bladder. And we have to try to address that. Some of you were hit by a car when you were a child and had a massive pelvic injury. And now you're in your 40s and you have constant frequency urgency. It feels like a UTI, but it's not a UTI. It is, in fact, the result of that muscle injury and that nerve injury. And some of you, your symptoms may be the result of long-term chronic fight or flight from something that perhaps happened in childhood. Some of you could have recurring UTI. Many others of you will have estrogen atrophy. And so the gift of today, the gift of IC in 2022, is that we're not going to send you down the bladder treatment pipeline anymore, because we know it does not work. A one-treatment-fits-all approach simply does not work. Today, we do a customized diagnostic workup. We're trying to understand what is driving your pain. And then we want to
Mm.
help you. We want to help you address that. If we need to treat the lesions, we're going to treat the lesions. If we need to fix your diet, we're going to fix the diet. If we're going to help build some better stress management skills, you got nothing to lose. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it, because I believe in you. I believe that you deserve hope. I believe that you deserve to be pain-free for the rest of your life. But it's
Yeah.
hard. There's nothing easy about this journey. It's hard, and there's a lot to learn. And this event has the potential of really helping you understand some of the things that could be driving your symptoms. And of course, Joanna works with patients directly. I work with patients directly. We are more than happy to take your questions. Victoria here says, I get pain in my left foot by my toes.
Yeah.
Hi, Sherry. Yeah, I mean, who would have guessed the foot pain would
It's so important to treat right from the head right to your toes, and that's the thing. And when we look at the whole body, we start to look at more different things. But you're right, there is no one size fits all for IC. It doesn't exist, and there's no magic solution, there's no magic pill. There is supplements which can help, so many different things which can help, but actually, in my opinion, actually having the right information is the first thing that will help.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I think what we're prone to do, I'm the first to say that I did it. I had a supplement cupboard that looked like a pharmacy, because I was just like, oh, well, apparently that works and that works, but I didn't understand why it could work.
Right.
I didn't understand what the different things could help with.
Right.
So, the idea is to get the information right from the people who have the answers, and then being able to target things appropriately.
Right.
That's kind of, then at least there's a path to go down with the answers.
Exactly. And one of the things that I'm constantly reinforcing is the concept of cause versus effect. The symptoms are the effect. We've got to understand what's driving those symptoms. And the challenge that we have is the first symptoms are often these frequency, urgency. What do you normally associate that with? UTI. You call your doctor, hey, I have a bladder infection. The doctor throws antibiotics at you. They don't work. And then, you do the long-term antibiotics. They don't work. Then you do the overactive bladder meds. They don't work. Then somebody gives you the IC lecture. You do all the IC stuff, and they don't work. You're still flaring. You're still miserable. Why?
Because we haven't understood what causes it. That's the thing.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't quite understand, or the magnitude of what actually could be causing it, because somebody could have, so for me it was my gut and my nervous system, which are both hugely linked, both of them, and that was causing vaginal yeast infections. So yeast infections, gut imbalance, nervous system. By getting those under control and having the right tools and techniques, and targeting the right areas, I was able to get my symptoms completely back under control and live a normal life again.
And I'm the same way. The doctor who told me, right? The doctor who told me I'd live with severe pain for the rest of my life, get used to it, he was wrong.
Yep.
He was absolutely wrong. Hey, listen, I know that we've been doing this for a while. I want to be a little bit selfish for a moment. I want to take advantage of your expertise.
Of course.
So, and I kind of want to talk about the United Kingdom, because right now, patients in the United Kingdom, I mean, they've got one really good resource, which is Bladder Health UK, where they can go to get information on a variety of urinary symptoms. But I find that a lot of patients struggle to get the care that they need. Can you give us a little bit of idea of what's happening in the United Kingdom right now with respect to IC care, and are doctors educated in it? Do you feel like they're being treated well, or are there still pretty significant hurdles that we have to pass?
To be honest, I haven't lived in the UK for about 10 years.
Okay.
And the care that I have received there, it wasn't great. Yeah. So I would go to a doctor, my odd stint that I've had sort of in the UK, I would go to a doctor, nobody had the answers. They'd just say, I remember actually, it's weird when things start to advance and you can look back and sort of piece things together. I remember once I was 19 or 20 and I said to my mum, oh, Mum, I think I've got a UTI. And she said, oh, that's okay. I get UTIs all the time. I'm going to give you bicarbonate of soda in some water and run you a bath and put some bicarbonate of soda in there. Soak for an hour. Did it. My UTI was completely gone, right? So she'd booked me an appointment with the doctor for the next day. So I went to the doctor and I said, I don't really see the point in me going because there's nothing wrong with me. She said, just go, get a culture and just check. Anyway, told the doctor everything, did my sample, no bacteria whatsoever. So I thought, oh, well, that's just a really efficient antibacterial that she gave me, an antibiotic. Great, well done, mum. And then I moved on with my life. But so that was my first instance in the UK of having no bacteria. She said to me, well, if you're not in pain, whatever, let's just leave it. And on a couple of occasions, probably about 5 years later, no, probably less than that, 3 to 5 years later, for various times that I was back in the UK to study or back to my current boyfriend who's English, and he was living there at the time. We were doing long distance between Spain and England. And I went to the doctors because every time I used to have sex, I would get UTI symptoms. So I'd go to the doctors, no bacteria, no bacteria, no bacteria. No, and nobody knew what to do. So nobody gave me a diagnosis, even though I was going to the doctor so frequently and I explained the situation. There was not even a mention of IC. And this was up until I was 25. So that was 6 years. And then in Spain, it was just impossible. So I wasn't able to see a urologist. They wouldn't refer me to a urologist in the UK. I wasn't allowed because I wasn't eligible. And then in Spain, I had to take out private healthcare because I couldn't see a urologist either. And here I was completely brushed off. Now, in the UK, on the NHS, there are such bad waiting lists. I think there's about 13 million people on the waiting lists to see specialists. So it takes years to get a referral.
Wow.
Years. So it's not in a good way.
Oh, Imagine being unable to sleep for years and not having access to pain care to help, medical care to help patients understand why they can't sleep, why they feel like they have a UTI all the time. That breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart.
A good friend of mine is a nurse in the UK, and I just went to her wedding a couple of months ago, and all of her friends, because her and her husband now are both doctors and nurses, so all of them were NHS doctors and nurses, and they were all saying that it's just dreadful. Aww. That it takes years to be seen by specialists, that the waiting list is so bad, that in the end patient care is really suffering because there's such enormous waiting lists.
Right.
So a lot of people either have to go private,
right,
or wait. So patient care at the moment in the UK, as far as my knowledge goes, it's not in a good way unless it's really serious.
I remember I was invited over to the UK, and I flew over with Dr. Marshall Stoller, and we appeared on the BBC. We did a couple of things there, and the take-home message from that about the UK health urology system is that there's a very small group of doctors who controlled everything, like 3 to 4 doctors who controlled what urologists did, what treatments were available, and if they didn't believe in IC, there's nothing. There was nothing there. So it was a very every country has its issues, and my heart breaks for some of our patients in the UK because I can't even send them anything right now because of Brexit, and so and of course we've just lost the Queen, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sad about that. That's why my mother got me up. That's why I needed to leave. My mother wanted to go watch the procession on TV, and that's yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
A really bad way, to be honest.
Life is complex right now. Okay, and I just a couple of food questions.
Of course.
So, we now know that not every patient is food sensitive. Right. I mean, we certainly, and that's what gets so confusing on Facebook, because you go into a support group on Facebook and there are some patients who can only eat 4 things before they're screaming in pain. There are others who's like, I can eat anything I want. Yeah. And of course, now we know why. We know that the Hunter's lesion patients are going to have very, very limited diet. So those patients who have a very limited diet probably have direct bladder wall issues. And we now know why caffeine is so damaging too, because caffeine stimulates the nervous system. Which is going to exacerbate nerve-driven pain. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on eliminating caffeine in our diet, and what do you suggest to somebody who they love their caffeinated drinks during the day, whether it's soda or coffee, and they're just completely unwilling to eliminate that?
Yeah. This is a bit of a tricky one because a lot of us do have quite a strong caffeine addiction, for want of putting it in a different way. The first thing that I would say is, what do you value more? Trying to see if it, because not everybody has an issue with caffeine, right? So some people can, a lot of my clients can actually drink caffeine without really seeing too much of a problem. They might see a bit more frequency, but they might be, sort of okay. So the first thing that I say is, would you rather eliminate it for 4 weeks, see how your symptoms are, try to reintroduce it, or would you just rather stay in pain and not even know if that's definitely causing it, right? So we have to actually start to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what do you prefer? Would you rather test the water and just give it up, find a different alternative, or just stay as you are and stay in pain and not being sure if coffee's the way? Most of the time people say, okay, fair enough. Like, 4 weeks and then I may be able to reintroduce even a little bit. Another thing is trying to find something to substitute it, because a lot of the time what I find with my clients who do have a bit more of a caffeine addiction is that, yes, coffee gives you that wake up, but part of it is always, it's the ritual, right? And so this is where I start to actually work on my clients with routines and rituals, and it's kind of bringing joy into a different drink and kind of having the same experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I say is, let's remove it. Try putting in matcha, which gives you a much slower kind of peak of energy. If they really can't get rid of it, it'll give a much slower peak of energy, and it doesn't give you that extreme boof boof which coffee does. So it's much more gentle. And if they're really struggling, even with the pain and the urgency and everything with there, is bringing in different types of tea, so that we're still having that kind of morning 10 minutes with your hot drink
Mm-hmm.
and replacing it with something else. Because of the lot of the time it's the morning ritual. Get up, make a coffee, start your day.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, make a different tea, and
Mm-hmm.
then start your day and see how we go.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is about prioritizing and finding a good replacement and working on some kind of morning routine or ritual, which, gives you that 10 minutes, which you would have had
Mm-hmm.
without potentially causing yourself pain.
Are there, and you mentioned matcha, and I don't know anything about matcha. I know
Mm-hmm.
nothing about it. Are there um kind of food like oh gosh, what is it? Not ginseng. Are there kind of popular drinks that are kind of herbal in nature that you have found some patients to be triggered by? All of that scares me. I don't tend to look at any of that, but I know it's really popular, whether it's matcha, whether it's green tea drinks, which have given me terrible flares. Are there any other things like that that patients turn to that can actually bother them a little bit more?
Yeah, things with drinks with like honey and ginger. So the ginger can be a little bit irritating for the bladder. So often I'll tend, to not advise that one unless they're confident they'll be okay with it. Turmeric has been a very interesting one. So obviously turmeric is anti-inflammatory. I personally drink a lot of turmeric tea,
Oh,
but it's kind of 50-50. With some people are okay, some people aren't, but there's definitely been a couple of my clients who have had quite nasty reactions to having turmeric tea, ginger tea, green tea, all of these different things. There's it's trial and error, like with a lot of things with IC.
what about cayenne? Some people are saying cayenne is good.
Really?
I don't know.
I've not had one.
I would say that. Okay, how do you feel about people drinking apple cider vinegar every day? I was working with a lady who was drinking 3 big shots of apple cider vinegar a day and drinking alkaline water all day, and she was in terrible pain, and it was getting worse.
Surprised, because you're putting acid into your body.
Right.
Like, you're making it go from one extreme to another, right? Because you're making your body too alkaline, which is also not good. We need to be a nice middle ground, right? We need to be a balance. But some people do find that apple cider vinegar is very helpful for them. I caught my boyfriend having it the other day. I saw him shotting apple cider vinegar. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, well, I read on the internet that it's really good." I was like, "Okay, it's fine."
What about, so another trend that was going through the internet early on was green smoothies filled with a bunch of greens. What do you think of that?
I think you could just eat them separately. Like, it's obviously bringing you lots of nutrients, which is good. But you know, a lot of the time, if we're putting all of the, and my issue with smoothies, I don't have an issue with smoothie, but my one issue is that often we'll put a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit in there, but there's nothing more to say. You know, there's no substance to it. It's not a meal. So people are getting hungry. We're having sugar spikes. We're having all of these different things happening. But what we actually need to be doing is filling it with good fats, good quality protein powders, and then putting in the greens. And then I see no problem with it. If somebody can tolerate it well, it could be a lot of fiber. But it all, like, all of our bodies are so different that my issue with the smoothie trend is that there's so much sugar in them from the fruit, which is
Right.
fine if we're balancing it with like a good quality peanut butter, or if we're balancing it with like a good quality Greek yogurt, if we're able to tolerate that, or whatever it is to bring in some good quality fats and protein so that
Okay.
we're not having a big spike and then crash.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So bring in mixes of things, right? So when I make smoothies, I always put a good quality protein powder. I'll have cacao, banana, blueberries, some spinach, and then I'll put in like frozen cauliflower or frozen courgette, zucchini for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so that there's a bit more in there, so it's not just fruit, because otherwise we're getting these huge blood spikes from the sugar and nothing to kind of keep us full for longer either. So we're not bringing in any proteins or fats, which we really need.
Now what about water?
Mm.
When it comes to just picking your water source, what we
Yeah.
say, you know, and the old data was saying Perrier was the still water. Perrier was considered top tier, but it was very, very expensive. Um, and you know, now here, at least what I say is spring water. Not distilled water, because distilled water takes out essential minerals. It's all about the spring water, or if you have good tap water is perfectly fine. But I really disagree with people drinking alkaline water all day. I think that's a mistake. What is your take on that?
I agree. I don't think that there's any need to be drinking alkaline water. From what I've read, I don't think that it's necessary. I think spring water's good. I have a filter in my house, so I personally don't drink the tap water here. But you know, I don't think there's any need to be drinking all of this alkaline water. To be honest, I think that we need to be drinking spring water.
Right.
And you know, and it is, you know, having to buy water and all of these things, it is an added cost. But if it's for your health, I'm a firm believer in you can never invest in anything as much as your health. To be honest, there's nothing that's ever going to be as valuable, particularly after having all the chronic pain.
Oh, yes, yes. Like we said, getting back to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are home and health and hearth, and something as simple as, I was working with a mother who had a young daughter who had something called eosinophilic cystitis. Eosinophilic cystitis means that the bladder wall is just massively perforated with white blood cells. So there's eosinophilous lung diseases, and there's an eosinophilic bladder disease. And what it came down to was their well water had been contaminated with pesticides from a nearby farm. And so sometimes it's just that simple. It's just getting back to the basics of, are there any toxins? Another thing, black mold. Did you know that if you have black mold in your home, you can have the symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain?
I had a client who had she had a nasty mold. She had been a teacher for 30 years or so, and she really struggled because she didn't know what was wrong with her. She had no clue what was happening, and she had mold. Because 30 years in the schools, she said that they would go in after the summer break and the walls would be covered in mold, the tables, everything. And from that, she developed a really nasty mold overgrowth in her body. And that was the RIC.
Yeah, it's just something we see. Well, now listen, hon, it is late for you. You're 8 hours. You're 8 hours ahead of me. And so what time? Is it 10 o'clock right now for you?
20 past 9.
Oh, okay. So I think thank you so much for coming into and doing this quick and unexpected event today, but that doesn't mean we can't do more in the future with a bigger audience. But this is a great opportunity just to come say hi. And you guys, thank you so much for watching. Joanna, thank you so much for popping in. And we will see you this weekend.
Absolutely. I've popped the link for the retreat in the comments, and I'll just put your code in there as well so that everyone can get a discount when they use your code as well.
Yeah. And just one last question. Victoria asked about ketamine cystitis. I bet you see ketamine cystitis more than we do. So
I've never seen it in my practice. I've never had one single person with ketamine cystitis. Never.
Well, so ketamine is a veterinary anesthetic, and it is also used for severe pain care. It was used for end-of-life pain care because they didn't really worry about side effects. These are patients who were in their last month or so of living, and they wanted to give them relief. Unfortunately, ketamine became very popular as a street drug, especially in Asia and in Canada. Every single urologist in the United Kingdom is treating ketamine cystitis patients.
Yeah,
and
ketamine is a really big thing in the UK.
Yeah,
huge. When my mum broke her arm, she was given ketamine by the hospital. She was given morphine and ketamine.
Yeah. So unfortunately,
the UK. In my practice, I've never seen it.
Yeah,
not one person.
It acts as an industrial solvent to the urinary tract. It damages the kidneys, it damages the ureters, it damages the bladder, it damages the brain, you name it, it damages it. So our therapeutic priority for somebody with ketamine cystitis is just we have to get rid of the ketamine. If we get rid of the ketamine, we can give the bladder some time to heal and repair the damage, because healing is always happening. But during that healing process, diet matters. It's about creating an environment that will support tissue healing and tissue repair. That means no coffee every day, no tea every day, etc., while we're trying to repair this intense damage. So, well, listen, Joanna, great to see you, and we will see you again next week.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jill, for having me. And I look forward to your session on Friday, is it?
Sunday.
No, Sunday at the retreat. Super excited. And just very, very excited. And thank you very much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. All right. Have a nice day.
Right, bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Okay. So let me see what I've got here with Facebook. All right, so hold on a sec. Can I just switch that over to my face, which I have done? We were doing that as a quick drop-in Zoom meeting. She wanted to go live, and I wanted to go live. But there was no announcement, so you missed it. All right, you guys. Well, listen, today's Tuesday. I got a ton of work I got to do. Hopefully, I will be here either Thursday or Friday to do a live support group meeting. Last week was brutal because it was so freaking hot. And on Sunday, I didn't do my normal live support group meeting because my brain had melted. It was terrible. So anyway, I will see you guys later. Have a good day.